Welcome back, everyone, to the Symposium on Multi-Stakeholders Engagement and Forest Protected Area Governance for Conservation and Livelihoods. We are on the 5th session, and we are going to continue on the topic of community-based forest protected areas management and livelihoods improvement. Please note that there will be a live Q&A segment at the end of the session, so feel free to pose your questions on the platform, and our speakers will try to answer all of them if time permits. Submit your questions via the question box on the platform. If you don't see it, do refresh the page, and I'm sure the question box will pop up. Now let's get started. Moderating this session will be our chairperson, Tan Sri Dr. Saleh bin Mohammad Noor. This preeminent forester and academician is recognized for his passion in protecting nature and natural resources, winning him the Merdeka Award for Environment in 2016. Tan Sri Saleh has been linked to various organizations, local and international, which included FRIM, UWIFRO, and Academy of Sciences Malaysia. He led the Malaysian Nature Society for a combined 30 years and is now their senior advisor, as well as the advisor of My Forest Project. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Tan Sri Saleh. Tan Sri, over to you.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see young faces and more senior ones, friends like Tekwin and Wang. And I am pleased to meet Supratna Jatna dari Indonesia and Christine Wulandari, also Nur Dayu, Nagarajan. Thank you very much, all the speakers. You all are given 10 minutes. Can the Secretariat project the CV of each speaker, the brief CV before each one? Yeah, there you are. The first presenter is Nagarajan Rangasamy. He's manager of the Forest and Coastal Program of Global Environment Center. More than 17 years experience, community-based resource management, eminent knowledge understanding peat swarms, peatland forest preservation, and mangrove management and local communities. And GC is now focused on sustainable use of restoration of degraded peatlands and mangrove forests through capacity building, hydrological management, fire prevention control, private sector partnership, and demonstration of good or best management practices. Naga, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes. Thank you. You're muted, Naga.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Tan Sri. Okay, thank you, Tan Sri, Dr. Saleh. Yeah, I appreciate for the kind introductions. Hi, everyone. A very good evening to all my fellow panelists and all ladies and gentlemen, and then to all these participants who joined this webinar today. By the way, my name is Nagarajan Rangasamy, and then I'm going to share my screen now. Everybody can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. For today's sessions, my topic is going to talk about the efficiency of the Friends of Mangrove programs, which has been implemented by Global Environment Center, Global Environment Center, with the involvement of community capacity through the Mangrove Conservation Sustainable Alternative Livelihood Program, which I think we've been implemented from year 2006 as of today. Which is involving many diverse community groups from fishermen, village people, and the different set of groups involved with the support of private sectors. That's why I'm going to talk. I'm going to explain throughout these presentations. In order to help to ease my presentation, I think the presentation been laid down according to these 4 outlines. First of all, I'm going to touch a little bit about GEC, Global Environment Center, and then about introductions to our Friends of Mangrove, which has been established by GEC. Then I'm going to talk a little bit detail about community-based mangrove conservation and sustainable alternative livelihood program, and then the key strategies that we put forward, innovations and achievement, at the end, I'm going to talk about the lesson learned, the best part or the worst part, and now how we've been altered everything in order to move forward to the much better movement. Yeah, a little bit about GEC. GEC is an NGO, currently known as an NPO, non-profit organization, which has been established in 1998. Specialized on multi-stakeholder approach, participatory approach in peatland, forest, river management, and GEC also support information capacity exchange through the main strategic environmental project in developing countries. And GEC develop cooperation for institutional framework with like-minded institute partners. Our tagline is building partnership for the environment. We can't do by ourselves. We need to do by together with everyone. In this case, the everyone, we need to be educated. We need to empower. Then only the things can be easily can be done at the local levels. To safeguard, our vision is to safeguard the environment and promote sustainable management of resources to meet the local, regional, global needs through a smart partnership with communities and like-minded organizations. And for the audience and participants, last year GEC was awarded one of the best NGO, role model NGO for undertaking the mangrove conservation works in Peninsular Malaysia, especially Malaysia. And then this is our 5 community groups, which is more focusing on Peninsular Malaysia. The distribution is from Perak, we have a 3 community group. In Selangor, we have 1 community group. In Johor, we have 1 community group. Okay, there are 5. Later, I'm going to explain detail. Very quick, how we establish community group. I think community always been prepared for them to face the disaster, not to prevent the disaster. But in our case, what happened is we try to prepare this community before they're going to face the disaster, what kind of preventive measures they can be implemented using their own ability. And then the additional empowerment that we're going to be put forward in this. Then previously community been known as identified as a mislinked for this kind of projects, and now we managed to turn into a different, we shape in a different way, in using the MySIPA concept through the establishment of the Friends of Mangrove and focusing on the 2 different strategies. One of it is a community-based mangrove management, another one is a sustainable alternative livelihood program, which is providing win-win concept. You assisting environment, at the end, environment unable to give you direct benefit, but you can able to benefit something out of it. I think that's what I'm going to explain throughout these sessions. Okay, this is a concept that I put forward. I think MySIPA, I think everybody know, communication, education, public awareness. This is something that's very important. How well you communicate the issue with them. That's where it's opening out their mind to understand. And then with the moment the mind being opened out, then the education comes in to empower, to mean there's where the theoretical aspect will change the mindset and they will turn into a kind of, instill the nature, the passion on it. At the end, whatever the success they meet, they also need to be turned as a local champion to advocate and to educate the fellow community members. That's where we're going to, this is where we've been mixed up with this MySIPA concept. And this is our first community strategies. So far, we did the 5 community groups. We managed to plant 120 hectare of degraded mangrove in the 5 locations that we are talking about, with involving of planting of 310,000 trees, involving 26 volunteers. And this is the what we call the ratio, being the statistic, which we planted more from 2006 in Kuala Lumpur, so approximately more than 200,000, followed by Sahabat Lekeh, then KDH, and until now we are newly established, we call Sahabat Utambakau, Pasir Panjang Laut in Perak. And this is the what we call in Kuala Lumpur site, which we've been planted more than 200,000 trees. I think if you look at it, planting trees is one part. This element is where the tree being planted by the community, and also the maintenance, the stewardship, the taking care is led by this community group. And in a way, the trees also is raised by the community. They are not purchased for commercial nursery. I think these are the where how we can get more efficiency by the local itself to look after their own environment. This is another case study. Is in Sabak Bernam, which is also in the Selangor. This has been established on 1912. This community group in admin. This is riverine mangrove, also been impacted by some of the human activities. At the end, we managed to rehabilitate nearly 20,000 trees being planted over this area. And this is another one is in Lekeh, which is a totally degraded area. You can see the pictures. We've been rehabilitated with the community. We have more than 85 survival rate. And then you can see all the lanes. The trees are growing well. with the involvement of the community. The moment we transfer the knowledge into the community, once they adopted the knowledge, that's not an issue. They're able to they can succeed with that. And this is another side, is a Manjong. It's a newly established group. I think currently we're working with this community, and then soon they're also going to be a local champion for this area. And this is another main activity that we carry out with the community. The first one, we're talking about how the community get involved and what kind of activity they've been done. This is the second thing, is how we can integrate what we call the resilience, the longer term participation by this local community group. That's where it can bring in some economic viability, social welfare, and looking after for sustainable purpose. There are some activities that we conducted. All this community, local community, they are very good. They're hidden with a lot of, what we call expertise, and that we need to put it in a right platform. Throughout this, the journey with GEC, we managed to identify all this kind of potential hidden within themselves, and we put it in the right platform and turn it into a kind of livelihood option which they can generate income. For example, the acanthus leaf currently been turned into kind of tea, like a green tea. There is a herb tea, and then there are some people can do very nice handicraft which can sell to the local demands, and some of them very good preparing the local seafoods, and that's also where getting a lot of attractions. This is where the sustaining the community group which has been established, and this is the local lot of publications and modules, awareness materials which has been prepared as a deviations, and then to make these local people to read, to understand, to appreciate about your own area. Yeah, and then if you look at it, where our program leading, we try to moving towards, so for the forest conservation work, directly support the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, which has been recognized. It's been documented well in Malaysian, one of the book published, Rising to the Challenge, Malaysian Contribution to the SDG, published by UKM. Yeah, this is something that I wanted to quickly, I would like to take 1 or 2 minutes extra just to explain. This is very important key matters. Involving community, I think now people widely been speaking about, we need to involve a lot of community, but again, involving community one-off is different case. We need the community involvement for longer term, because environmental issue, local oriented issue. And then if let's say we can able to find a local stewardship and guardians to look after the problem, then they can able to manage the team itself. The most of the environmental issue at the local level can be resolved, and then our globes, the people living in the globes, we can have a well-being living environment. One of it I'm going to like to emphasize is the cooperation with the various stakeholders vital to having a program at local level to involvement with the local community. The selection of community or villages to get involved in the project must be truly, regardless the age, experience, education. We can't have a bias, or we can't have a selective approach within that area. And we need to open to everyone, the interest people, the interest group. Then we can train them. Then they can have a longer term voluntary involvement in that. And also we need to develop confidence, enthusiasm, and also the ability of the community to the peers, to important why this thing will be done, to encourage community involvement to have a good bonding system to sustain forever and ever. Setting up a legal, consider those are the groups that we've registered, we've been established. It's not informal group. They've been legally registered and recognized by the Malaysians regulation being set forward. And moving forward, to support in terms of cooperation with the government agencies and appreciate. This is something that's very important. The moment we establish the community, they need to be seen as a kind of group which also supporting what are the government initiatives. They cannot be seen as a competitor. There has to be like a win-win concept. They have to recognize. Then, the moment the state government, the authorities are recognized, then the community will willing to put more effort to look after their own environment, and undertaking ongoing monitoring supervisions. That is something is very important. And finally, very, very important is sustainable social enterprise development and group management. Because in order to sustain the group, the monetary is important, but the monetary we can't provide yearly basis. It has to be self-generated or self-sustaining approach that we need to bring in. That's why if you look at it, the Sustainable Livelihood Program is playing the key role in order to sustain entire community group. Okay, this is some of the what they call some of our experience that we learned, that we've been put forward in this country from 2006 until now is really working well. But there's a lot of, as I mentioned, the lesson learned has to be placed properly for engaging or organizing a new community group. Thanks, Tan Sri. That's it from me. Sorry, taking a little bit about 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes.
Tan Sri, you're muted.
Can I invite the second speaker, my dear friend Teck Win? Please, you're muted at the moment, Teck Win. He's the Managing Director of Resource Stewardship Consultants in Berhad, a long-time member of MNS, I know. And a member of Center for Malaysian Indigenous Studies, University of Malaya, and then Young Lecturer at University in Nottingham. He explores the links between forests, wildlife, and people. And Teck Win, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Right, I need to share my screen. Okay. All right, there we go. Tan Sri, thanks for the welcome. It's really a pleasure to see you and other faces that I've known for some 20 years, including Mr. Raj and Mr. Sunny Wong. Of course, I mourn the fact that our comrade in arms, Mr. Balu Perumal, is not with us anymore. And if I may, I'd like to dedicate this talk to him because of all of the tremendous efforts that he put into community-based natural resource management in Malaysia. It was such a shock to me, and I still haven't quite got over it. But the loss to Malaysia and to community conservation in general is really going to be something that it's really direly felt. Anyway, with that, I will move on and in a somewhat somber fashion, say what I feel about community forests and what's perhaps what hope there is in moving forward. I was really inspired by the many concrete examples that Raj has just presented to us about working with communities. I'd like to share some slightly closer to the urban area from Raj's case. I'll talk about this forest, even though it looks quite rural. It's actually in the heart of the Shah Alam city. And I will talk about how we can move forward in terms of the legal perspective. I do acknowledge my friends, I hope, from Indonesia and the Philippines and around the world. And so I will try not to be too technical on the Malaysian perspective and share some lessons that will be applicable more generally. All right, so if we go on, let's just go on. Okay, the history of forest management. Well, my background is forestry, Tan Sri's background is forestry, but what I didn't realize until rather recently is that the history of forest management in Peninsular Malaysia actually goes back more than 10,000 years. If you have a look at these cave paintings in Tambun, in Perak, Ipoh, they think that this painting here is actually putai, Parkia speciosa, which is a type of bean. And you can see the pods here, and then down on the stem, you have what looks like buttress roots, and you have a long trunk. So this is, in a way, it's forest management in that humans climbed up, harvested the seeds, and to a certain extent, managed them in a way which is known as para-cultivation. But despite the fact that the communities have been involved in forest management for so long, officially in Malaysia it is the government that manages all the forests, and there's not yet actually a framework for the community to be involved. All of the examples which Raj gave earlier, he mentioned that it was so key to involve the government agency. That's because officially the government owns the forests, and they fortunately, I'm going to speak on behalf of GEC in a way. They have an MOU with the government, and so that it allows the communities to have this position. But in the framework of the law itself, there's a gap, and I'm going to talk about that very briefly. What I will do is we will have proceedings, and so all of the technical stuff you'll be able to read in the proceedings which have been written up. But so I won't go into all of that in too much detail. But basically, the legal basis for community forest management is quite interesting because there's a basis on customary law. Not just the Orang Asli have customs, but also local Malay customs that go back hundreds of years. And then we have statute law, which normally people think of when you talk about law. And then there's also court judgments. And something very encouraging is that we have an official policy just launched, which is actually opening the door for community forest management. Right, so customary law involves what I mentioned about the padai trees. It can be a para-cultivation, including non-timber forest produce, such as some kind of medicinal plants, incense and so on. And that can actually be a form of management intervention that local community does customarily. Then, of course, throughout the region, we have forest orchards, which the Malay word is dusun, and swidden farming, which is also in Malay is known as buka ladang. It's basically also known as shifting cultivation, although that term is somewhat well, it's actually also called slash and burn, which is actually quite derogatory, but this is the tradition. Now, when the colonial powers came in, they had this idea of drawing these boxes around the forest reserve. So you have the Sungai Buloh Forest Reserve and the Bukit Raka Forest Reserve, and they were created under a series of enactments which are more than 100 years old now. And when a piece of land was, they drew this boundary around it and they called it a forest reserve by publication in what's known as the Government Gazette, they actually did provide originally for communities. For example, there was a provision that they talk about Sakais, which are now known as Orang Asli, the indigenous people living in or even within 3 miles of the forest may actually enter and make clearings. This is quite incredible, but there's this provision that allowed the local people to not only use the forest, but to open up patches for this buka ladang, for the swiddening. And they can enter for their own use, collect any forest produce, hunt it, shoot, and fish within the reserve. Now, what happened, however, in 1985 is that there was this new National Forestry Act, actually in 1984, but then in Selangor, it was incorporated into enactment in 1985. And what that law did is it repealed the existing laws and says that, all right, for any forest reserve created under previous laws, it will still be recognized. However, any privileges or rights submitted previously shall cease. So that was an attempt to say, okay, we allowed it before, but no more. Another change in the law, I'm just going through updates in the law, is that there was an amendment in 2011 which required that any area to be taken out of the forest reserve, you have to go through a public inquiry first. Previously, it was just, by the way, this area is no longer a forest reserve. But this actually opens the door for the community to actually have a say. Well, it's maybe it's not binding, but at least they have a chance to say how they feel about the fate of forest reserves. And the courts, when the communities, occasionally, these are all Orang Asli cases, but Orang Asli, these are indigenous people of the Peninsula Malaysia. Occasionally, they took the government to court and said, look, you call this a forest reserve, but actually this is our water catchment area. This is our community forest. And they challenged it in court, and they have won on actually numerous occasions. The courts have said, okay, the government has these laws, but we recognize that the customary law, it predated and to a certain extent supersedes the forestry law, unless the statute law explicitly extinguishes something that was generated by customary law. And this is a bit of a gray area, and it's not resolved. And so I was delighted when in March this year, this new Malaysia forest policy came out, because it actually explicitly says that the government will identify community use areas inside forest reserves, which is wonderful. You know, all of the previous Malaysian forest policies, well, there were two previously. They made no mention of community forestry, but this new one does. So very, very encouraging. And so we've got policy. How do you put that into practice? Well, it's actually the first step would be relatively simple. We've got a list under the Forestry Act. There's a list of use classes or classifications, and there's something like 10. And to begin with, all we would need to do is just add a new category called community forests. And that would then open the door for later on creating rules for how to manage it. And creating rules, of course, the framework, that'll be more complicated. But if we pass this first hurdle, which would be to create this category, then there are forests that are already involving communities, such as the ones that Raj was talking about, and the one that I mentioned in Shah Alam in Bukit Cheraka. There's another one which is kind of informally designated, which Tan Sri himself was instrumental in saving, and that is the Kota Damansara Community Forest. But despite the fact it was gazetted and nominally called a community forest more than 10 years ago, till today, there's no framework. And so I will close on this hopeful potential that that there will be political will to amend the Forestry Act to provide this framework. All right, Tan Sri, I think I will end there, but I'll be happy to take any questions. Okay, Tan Sri, can't hear you. I think you're muted, Tan Sri.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Tagwin. Congratulations, your PhD. I didn't realize you got your PhD. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tagwin. So now we go to the next speaker, Nur Idayu. Please, Idayu. She is an associate professor, director of testing, measurement, education at SETMA, University Utara Malaysia, an expert in the field of analytics and at the same time active in sustainable activities. Currently, she's secretary of the University's Sustainable Plan. Oh, wow. And active implementing various sustainability programs, such as solid waste management, carbon action plans, energy sustainability, and talent development. She's a member of the Malaysian Sustainable Campus Network and Sustainability Development Solutions Network. Professor Naradayi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right. Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Tan Sri. And good afternoon to all. Yes, you can call me Idayu, while I'm actually representing UUM Living Campus teams. So actually my background is more on statistics, but I would say that from several meeting with friends, then it's time actually to move on the sustainable campus. So in UUM, we have what we call as a living campus. So living campus is what we say is a community that has been established around late 2019, and this team is responsible for planning, mobilizing, and monitoring the campus sustainability plan for our university. So my presentation today is more on how actually we use some management tools for measuring the social impact in the development of Tamanade, a new taman in our university. So most, I would say that usually in our campus, when it's come to any environment project, usually it's led by one department, and most of the time, the way how they develop, like durian orchards or forest management, is more on say is for environmental, but sometimes they quite fail in terms of to justify why they need to proceed with new green area in campus. So when I joined, I was given a task to lead living campus. So I put into, I would say, a measurable kind of thing, so that whenever we want to do some things that try to contribute for campus sustainability, there's a measure that we know whether the project should give impact or not. So it suited to my background technically. So I'm not from any area related to forest management, but I'm still learning on that. Okay, so next. So I divide my presentation into 4. Okay, first, I just introduce very quick about our Taman Nadi. It's a new greenery area in our campus. So then I will go directly into the 2 tools that, this is a management tools that I use in order to come up with a proper plan to the top management, so that they have reason why they can agree with this project. The one is called a design thinking, the other one is called SROI. Okay, next. Okay, technically UUM. Okay, next. Okay, so actually UUM, our areas covers about our forest reserve covers about 475 hectares. So we have 2 parts with our secondary forest and also our virgin forest. So for virgin forest, we strive to maintain it, okay. But then for the secondary forest, so a lot of projects have been carried out in order to, I would say, to increase the number of green area in our campus. So in record, our university, we already have durian orchards, bamboo forests, fruit orchards, herbs gardens. Okay, so, but the thing is, the true fact is that whenever we want to continue managing this area, it costs us a lot. For the durian orchards only, it costs us around 60,000 a year. So when the times come, with the COVID-19, but even before the COVID-19, financial sustainable is one of the key issues raised by many, especially, when university has to justify which project should be, delayed first and to be delayed, and which was to be given priorities. So that's where only project that can provide significant impact, given evidence, even estimating impact. So that will be given a priority. So that's where in Living Campus, we strategize the way how we work to make sure that we can, whenever we want to kick off any certain project, so we have first a proper plan, what to be done, for short term, immediate term, long term, and at the same time, we can calculate the impact. Okay, next. All right, so how actually appear the Taman Nadi? So back in 2019, when our board members, when they have a chit chat among them, then suddenly come into the issues is about certain rare fruits, especially typically in area of Kedah. So then some rare fruits hardly to be found. Okay, so then comes the idea, why not we have UUM allocate one area in our campus to plant some of these rare fruits. But bear in mind, UUM, we don't have any forestry faculty. We only focus on the management, because our university is management university. So whenever we come up with that particular something like that idea, the problem is that who's going to manage? Okay, by right, we have one department called Development and Maintenance Department to look after, but considering manpower, continuous managing the park would be another issues. All right, so then to what extent is the impact of Taman Nadi if you want to focus? So my presentation tried to answer, to share with you how we come up with the design of sustainable framework of Taman Nadi, and how we get to set the measurement in order to calculate the impact when we have that park. Okay, next. But the real fact is that when the first round meeting with the top management, the question is why Tamanade? Okay, why we must have another, Tamanade, since we already have our University Forest Reserve. So that's one of the key asked by our top management. So because you have to think that when we want to have even one new park, it's mean another cost to be considered by the top management. Okay, then come with the idea, are we going to have a park only for CSR, or we want to make something, so generate income from that park? Okay, and how actually we then the questions come with how to sustain the park, because we cannot depend totally on one department, our JPP, Development and Maintenance Department, because at the same time they also have another task in our campus to do. Again, then we look at the, we try to balance that since we don't have agriculture faculty, we don't have forestry faculty, but then how to build up the park by putting everybody, put all the three big colleges together to make the project live. Yeah. All right. Next. Okay. So next. So in order to design this, so my team come up with, instead of we just directly, design SWOT analysis, which is commonly used in management. So we just use the design thinking. Design thinking is actually a thinking process. It's just a simple thinking process for solving problems by prioritizing consumer needs above of else. So in our case, our consumer here is our stakeholders and our top management, including our board. So the process includes by observing, with empathy, how people interact with environments and employees, and interactive and approach in order to get so-called not ideal, but a kind of park that interested by most people, something like that. Okay, so actually the design thinking, next. Design thinking, this process is actually commonly used by engineers or designers in ICT, technology development, and also apps design, apps development. But why we use this into our project, because we want to get as many possible contributions from UUM, from UUM staff and students, so that whenever they give ideas, they contribute to our ideas, they also in future can contribute either to volunteerism or any project that can be done in that park. So this is a strategy to avoid making the park like silence with only tree but without any interesting project. Okay, so the process can be seen in the slides. So for the first round, of course, we consult our university. We have to check whatever we have, whether our financials really sustain for that. And actually, at the same time, we also have to map whether our project, the interest of our project or goal of our project met with the university strategic plan. So again, our university is part of the university that participate in UI Green Matrix, and we are also about to participate in THU Impact Ranking. So all these rankings also include, greenery area in campus. So we have to map everything, because whenever we say, okay, top management, this is what we have done. So the project actually met with certain KPIs. Okay, then from that result, so we define by identifying, through several roundtable discussions, what is actually the good model that should be to be part in our project. And then we come up with we stimulate thinking among our members on how to get that kind of ideal taman actually. And of course, then we scale down our framework, and finally we produce one. Okay, so the next slide actually tells about, that. Okay, so instead of we just have a park, so I put everybody who has can contribute, to make the park lively. So actually in UM we have one team who's currently looking at the waste management framework. We collaborate with Daman, to how to manage our food waste in campus. So instead of taking out the food waste to the landfill, then actually we come up with the processing in our campus. Okay, we have a STEM UUM. STEM UUM they are also available in other university. So they have to come up with a project that can how actually to use or to implement science into any sustainable project. So having them, so we map everything. So everybody in campus, either you are from schools, okay, from faculty, or you are from any departments, you actually can contribute to make this park lively. Okay, so we put everything. So this is how. But to be fair, we don't say that the project can generate income to the university, but it's more like at least we have the park and we generate certain amount of income, and that income can be used to sustain or to maintain the park. Okay, right. Next. I also forget to say that currently our university currently preparing a plan for campus edutourism. So this park is one of the product of the edutourism package. Okay, next is how actually we come with the measurements. So for certain SROI is a new methodology introduced by our team, because this kind of measurement, it's count not only financials, but it's also take into account some I would say like impact, okay, to the stakeholder, like social talent development. So we put everything into monetary, convert all the non-monetary into monetary, and then we calculate the SROI. This is kind like like a cost benefit analysis, but the difference is that it's take into account the social impact as well. All right. So next. So when we present the there are steps actually.
You please, you have exceeded your time.
Yeah. Can I just summarize?
Okay, please. Yeah.
Okay. So by using the SROI, actually we managed to convince our board to allow us to operate the park, and it started early 2020 before we have to a little bit slow down our project due to the COVID-19. So next will be I should just share with you our way forward. Okay, these are the measurement that we into account. All right, next. Okay. So that's actually how actually we try to with the impact of COVID-19, and also we couldn't have students in our campus, but still at the moment we are growing some tree, planted some tree. Currently we have 53 species. Okay, and we really hope, currently we are in the right time, we are planning more, and because we wait for our students to come back, and then we really hope that we can execute our plan as scheduled. By that, okay.
Thank you, Dayu.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry to shortcut your presentation, but I find very interesting. And congratulations on what you're doing in the university. Okay, can I have the fourth speaker now, please? Christine. Can I have the CV, please? Secretary, can you show the CV? Hello? Secretary? Oh, there you are. Associate Professor, Dr. Christine, Dr. Noor Idayu Mahat. Sorry. Oh, how did I get it, Christine? Maaf. Dr. Professor Dr. Engineer Christine Wulandari of University Lampung, Indonesia. Has under about years of research experience, including mainstreaming gender and socioeconomic conditions, partnership programs, negative impacts of COVID-19. Oh, interesting. And the farmers, traditional indigenous practices on ecological restoration. Published a range of articles and papers in journals, in books on forest health, community participation, management of conservation, and gender and socioeconomic mainstreaming. Terima kasih, Ibu. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Saleh.
You're welcome.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Good
Apa khabar di
afternoon.
Indonesia? Sehat semua?
Baik. So we have some COVID impact, so we only stay home right now. Okay.
Iyalah.
Thank you very much for all ladies and gentlemen, and also for the CEO of this organization. So this is we have the good nice appreciation, because this afternoon we can share one of our research result that entitled, sorry, I will full screen first. Yeah, this is the one of our research result entitled Community Social Capital for the Conservation of Forest Biodiversity in Forest Park Register 19 in Lampung Province, Indonesia. This is our team, researcher team. We have two universities here with Professor Makoto Inu from Waseda University, Japan, and three of us from Lampung University is Professor Irwan Sukri Banua, Dr. Pitoyo Budiono, and myself. Okay, this is our introduction. Actually, in Indonesia right now, we have a conservation area, huge area actually, because we have 27.15 million hectares, and it has already divided by 552 conservation area management units. So I think all of us, we can imagine with the huge area, and we have the many of conservation areas, so it will be have a many also conflict in this area. So for the rest of the conflict, our government actually have the some scheme. One scheme is they have, or our government have the one of rule of Directorate General, namely technical guidance for conservation partnership. In our term, or in our research, partnership can be defined as a form of cooperation between stakeholders mutually beneficial in achieving a common goals. So for this implementation of the partnership, it should be considered for the social capital of community surrounding the forest, or surrounding our research area in Forest Park 19, Register 19, Lampung Province. So this paper will discuss about the role of community social capital to preserve the area. Actually, we have two objectives in our research, is to identify and assess what the social capital elements, and the second one is to analyze the relationship between individual characteristics and the element of social capital, also forest biodiversity conservation outcome. Our method, actually, we have already conducted almost 4 years ago, because previously we have planned to present in 2019. See, this is our located is in Forest Park, Register 19. Actually, this nearby our capital city, is around 30 minutes from our capital city. And we use interview of the respondent. We have study literature. Also, we use Likert scale and Spearman rank correlation, SWOT test, and continue with QSPM test. Also, okay, this is our one result, or the first result. Actually, we have a result, analytic result, correlation of the respondent characteristic with the social capital. Based on our research result, we have 4. The highest correlation, income between the social network, social status in the village, correlation with caring, and the third one is social status in village with reciprocity. And the fourth one is forest area with proactive. The second statistic result in our research, we have 6 high score for correlation, social aspect with caring, social aspect with reciprocity, and ecology aspect with proactive, ecology aspect with reciprocity. The fifth one is economy aspect to social network, economy aspect to reciprocity. And when we have the spot analysis for our research based on the two analysis. So we have like this one. We have actually for each factor for internal, external weakness, and external opportunities. So we have 4 variables each. We can discuss later when you have questions. Because according to EO, we should have discussion. So I just present one by one the numbers so we can discuss after this. So the last of our statistic result, we have 3 priority with the QSPM analysis. The first one, we have the first priority. We should have economic activities that are simultaneously carried out with the ecology activities. So we can use it to optimize of all activities that relevant with NTFP product from this area. The second one, our priority is institutional strengthening. It should be in the operation of the member and also the institution. So we hope after that we have the umbrella policy for have the good or for have the satisfied operation, the member and also the institution. The third one is coordination. It should be better, or we must have a good coordination between institution and stakeholders relevant with this partnership program. And our conclusion. We have 3 conclusions. The first one is biodiversity conservation effort through the conservation partnership in our research area consider to the characteristic of the people living around the forest, namely income, forest area, formal education, and social status in the village. Our second conclusion is the social capital variables should also be considered, including reciprocity, social network, proactive and caring, with biodiversity conservation through conservation partnership program. And the third one, the priority strategy and conservation effort in our research area should be the development of our conservation program simultaneously with the increase of our people income. Thank you, Dr. Saleh. I think this is all of our research result based on our statistic, the SWOT analysis and QSPM test. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. Thank you for a very interesting discussion. I like your ideas of community social capital, and maybe you could discuss that further sometime in the future. Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Wong Chun Hey. Can I have he is the Wetland Program Manager of the Malaysian Nature Society Conservation Division, and main area of focus is coastal wetlands, flyway sites, urban forests, and firefly conservation. He's Honorary Secretary of the Fireflies International Network and co-chairs the IUCN SSA Firefly Specialist Group. Sunny, I always call him Sunny. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Yeah, so that's my real name. So Sunny is a nickname, so it's easy to communicate for people to call me. So I'm going to start my presentation. Sorry. Okay. Let me enlarge it. Sorry about that.
slides.
Yes. The slide and last it. Okay. So today I'm going to thank you, Tan Sri, and all the organizers for arranging this symposium. And today I'm going to talk about the Asian Pacific Forest Governance Project that's managed by the late Mr. Balu Barma, which is my head of division. And this is one of the components of it. The project is rural communities engagement in the forestry, and we call it the Pakas community. So this is our late Balu Barma. This talk is the tribute to the Balu, and so I'm going to present his paper, his work, and I will try my best. So this work is a European Union initiated and funded project for 4 years, and the main title is strengthening non-state actors' involvement in the forest governance in Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Papua New Guinea. So the project's main aim is to equip non-state actors, that is other than the government, with the capacity and access to information, transparency, networking opportunities, and policy advocacy skills to ensure that they have a stronger voice. It means the non-state actors have a stronger voice in the forest governance of the respective countries. As you have heard earlier, Tagwin talk about the laws, which is now greatly improved, and also you have heard about Raj talk about the communities work in forest governance. So this component, the community engagement component, aims to have a network platform for all the communities that exist or to be formed to exchange ideas and experiences of forest governance advocacy, and to capacity build them, the communities itself, on the empowerment initiatives in maintaining rural and also urban forests. So, urban forests, this subject is explained by Ms. Yiling earlier on the urban community forests. And areas that we look at is the forested areas and the IBAs. IBAs are important bird and biodiversity areas. We look at the national policy level, the state level, and the local level. So, and the community groups, these are the rural and urban communities living adjacent or inside high conservation area, value area, or in urban forests. And communities here, we lump it as NGOs, CBOs, and other partners network, including the MNS members. So yes, community groups. And community-based governance, forest governance, needs to try to develop a mechanism to protect forests in urban and rural area involving the local communities network. So information sharing and communication can be directly communicated to policymakers and enforcement agencies by the community groups. So they are also engage them in activities and mobilize them to the network of communities, which is the Pakas community, for activities and monitoring work, rehabilitation and restoration of the forest, and awareness outreach program, not only to their village themselves, but to other groups or the public during events. So, and for us to we provide the support in the training on community groups, and they themselves can be in the future be trainers themselves, and they help support each other. So UCFN is an urban community forest, which my colleague has mentioned in the early session. And Pakas community is this presentation is about. So it's a program where the local groups, they will solve local issues. So below you can see logos of various community groups that was founded by other organizations or themselves or during the project itself. So, and this is Community Pakas logo. It's a unique logo that is created by the villagers in the first successful village community group that Malaysian Nature Society has implemented so that villagers themselves will have activities for the public on the environmental awareness activities to the public, and also they go on exhibitions and give talks to the public itself. So this is a very interesting village it's a normal village where these are the migrants of the Indonesians who stay there and for a few hundred years ago. And we use this model because, and we use the name itself and rebranded it as a Pakas community, so that for this community will be a network for all the rural community groups, so that they can solve matters in environmentally sensitive areas and also solving human-wildlife conflict, and also enhance responsible socio-economic development. And Pakas community provides the platform for discussion, sharing of ideas. So among the various community groups that we have annual get-togethers for them, so that they can share all this experience among themselves. And Pakas community was officially formed during the project, during the World Firefly Day in 2018. And on 8 July, that's July 2018 in the Taman Keklik, Kuala Selangor. Here you can see some of the various groups that we subgroup them under the Pakas community network into flyway community that looks after migratory birds along the coastal mangroves of the country. And we have the wildlife community that looks after the tigers and the sunbears, tapir, and then we have the hornbills group, the indigenous people, and then the Ulugro Semai group that looks after the Rajabuk wing and the Rafflesia. And now the latest one is the otter ambassadors. So wetlands community will involve the groups of Sahabat Hutan Bakau, Tifwa, Sahabat Gambut, and Kampung Sungai Sireh, and Eco Care Kete. So some of these groups are formed by other organizations like GEC, the Sahabat Bakau, and also Sahabat Bangput that help support the network itself. And Firefly communities are something new. We have a few groups set up across the country. And then we also have Firefly ambassador for the urban forest where fireflies occur. So these are the formation pictures and photos, and also formation of the Pakas and Firefly community at the same time. And during the Festival of Wings in October, we have 12 communities who came together to share and elect the community members of the Pakas community. And then they also have a chance to give talks to the public, set up activities and interactive activities. So activities-wise in the project, we often get them to attend our annual events like Raptor Watch. So they will do it's for them to experience what they have learned, and then to share their own experience and what they are doing to the public. And we also form new communities, like the Sungai Timun Firefly communities. That's where they do the nursery for the rehabilitation of the mangrove plants that has been destroyed. And also we have the Hornbills festivals and set up the Sahabat Enggang or Friends of Hornbills. That is, these are indigenous people. So, and we help them learn how to share and be aware of this hornbill. And then the question, are the groups effective? And then look at the present groups and the older groups, and then the role they play in forest governance. And you have heard the first speaker, Raj, talk about Sabak Hutan Gambut and others groups. They have recognition of their work regionally and also nationally. So, and Jaringan Committee, Sahabat Ruang Madu is the Sun Bay Committee groups. So they have best management practices to address human-wildlife conflicts. So they've come up with all those HIPAA materials on that. And then, of course, the peatlands group, the Sabak Hutan Bakau, and then how they are involved in the national level itself, as mentioned by Raj earlier on. And as well, Sungai Lengguri and the Semai group, how they also do their help in the conservation work. And we also, during the project, we celebrated the Indigenous People Day with them. So that
you end up with Sunday. It's already past your time.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to skip a few slides, and then we go on to the challenges faced. It's like arousing the interest and motivation of the group itself, because it involves human element. And then they also have a second tier problem, which they need a younger generation to take over their group and to be sustainable, or how to be sustainable in terms of any monitoring or second tier volunteers to help them. And moving forward for the project is to have more capacity building for the groups, and we'll get together, continue exposure them in the activities, and formally get them to register, those that haven't registered as a formal group. As you mentioned by DC earlier on, you need to register formally so you can be recognized. And also to form more groups, there are many areas that needs the communities are living in these areas. So creating when Malaysian Nature Society is also creating an MNS community membership section that these groups can join us so that we can service them, and also to further strengthen the MNS membership.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sunny. Yeah. Appreciate your comprehensive presentation on MNS activities and community-based participation, etc., etc., etc. Well, our last speaker, last but not least, is Supratna Jatna, Professor, Chairman of the Research Center for Climate Change and Institute of Sustainable Earth Resources, University of Indonesia, Co-Director and Association of Pacific Rim Universities of CIMAS, Climate Change Mitigation and Action Strategy based in University of Santiago. Is also appointed member of the Indonesian Academy of Sciences. Research interests include landscape conservation, biodiversity, species conservation, fire, forest fire mitigation, ecotourism, and sustainable tourism, and climate change mitigation and adaptation. Professor, the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tan Sri. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I'd like to have assistant for my presentation. Thank you. So can you, all right, thank you. So this presentation basically is my co-authors, Dr. Sri Mariati from School of Tourism, Trisakti School of Tourism, Dr. Dolly Priyatna from the Belantara Foundation, and also Dr. Tahir Fatoni and myself. So this initiative, basically, it was started in 2017. It's to call for one of the biggest national park that in Sumatra, not the biggest, but the mangrove areas. They have almost 360,000 hectares of the mangrove areas. And behind this national park, basically, it's been known that there has been burn and the haze is all over Sumatra and Malaysia, Singapore, and many others. So we thought that we have to be, understand what that's really the mangrove and also the area that around these national parks. Next slide, please. So the ideas of the ecotourism come out after the president basically like to see this more on the nature tourism. So what he said that this nature tourism, it has to be 30% of Indonesia because Indonesia has, of course, one of the highest biodiversity in the world. So this should be, and also the park, it has been stated by Professor Wulandaris about how big is the Indonesian National Park. It's about 27 million hectares. But our analysis previously that it is very little that generated revenue from these national parks and tourism, especially on tourism. So the idea is bringing that how do we get the park that is jeopardized because of the burn, because of the encroachment, and the community has never been get benefit from these parks. So the idea is how do we get this buffer zone between this national park to be part of this community-based tourism. So next slide. So this is the aims. I think this how do we get this community ownership in the park. Of course, it's not easy because it's the law itself is not so familiar, not so much on how that community be involved. So it's really the buffer zone. They have to be in buffer zone in there. But the problem is that when they have, they don't have any revenue, and especially in that kind of community, I think suddenly they become encroach in the national park. Next slide. So the idea is how do we get started? We started with the participatory appraisal of this community around the areas, and we come up with the 5 villages around the park that we have to choose, and then we do the product development, community consortium forum that has to be should be solid, and then how that the sustainabilities, which is blended financing and stakeholders and development and so on. Next slide. So the first step to product development is not easy, so that we have to participate role and talking, because when you see the community, it's mixed between indigenous and the Bugis people. The Bugis coming from Sulawesi, and they are mostly the people who basically fisher. They go around the areas. But the community, local communities also now becoming, it's very difficult So the only thing that is a problem is how do we get this go to the community? So I think we found out that the water is the most difficult one, especially fresh water. So after the PRA, we knew that we cannot develop anything unless that we can resolve the water problem. So, if you see that the water is becoming the most difficult pressure, because this is the area where in the mangrove areas, there is no fresh water. So they have to be very far from that, and that's why the idea is to bring this one. Next slide. So we come up with the water first, water, air, and other hygienists, because of course this is the community. The first thing is to bring that, for example, how that sanitation, because tourism is not easy to get this community. Most of them is really they defecated there and everything's, So how do we get this WARS program that is coming from UN? So we bring it to these communities. And for example, from the waste, how do we get the waste? And full of the plastic, basically plastic waste. How do we get this plastic, get rid of the plastic waste? So I think we're working with communities, and then in order to get, when they achieve that, so we painted the house. So the house will be painted by themselves. They of course, the Bugis people and the Palembangis and many other local community there, they have different houses, style and also this thing. But it's really good. So our approach is to do that one. The next slide is really and then we are understanding what that's really the master plan of the ecotourism development. We understand that how do you make this score criteria, uniqueness, rarities, beauty, and all these things, plus also whether that is really possible, how far is it from the big cities, and so on and so on. So that's why we selected this, the map there. And you can see this all along the beach, the coastal areas of Sumatra. And just behind that, of course, is Singapore and Malaysia. Next slide. So how do we get empower people? That the 3 university and NGOs, good thing. Belantara is community development NGOs. My university is really look at what the big side of the conservation. And Trisakti School of Tourism, of course, they have developed this tourism. How do we get the 3 things? So we're working with the local government, with the chamat, with the head of the villages, and then the own companies, village-owned companies, and trying to get this thing to do product development from the raise from themselves, right? So next slide. Also the transportation, used to be, so we invited the governor of South Sumatra to look, there you have potential. This area is 100,000 birds migrated to the national park. But most of those foreigners come and they just go. They don't care about the communities there. And the community just watching all these, beautiful ship coming to the national park. So I think we're trying to get this empowered. So, in order to go there, there has to be working with communities. So of course that's not easy, and then there's 5 villages. So we divided. So when the tourists come to the village, they have all this product they develop. And then they can also do all these things, Next slide. So this is the ship that we built. And then we look at the impact, possible impact. So, and then how that will be positive, negative, all these things from the tourism development. Next slide. Then if you see this, look at that one, how do we get this, and look at with the spatial analysis, what the possible, because of course there are tigers, there is elephants, there's all the biodiversity in the areas. And how do we get this so that they will not disturb the areas? So we make this a map, and then so understanding community also, how that really, when they develop the ecotourism, they should be, of course, they will not encroach the areas anymore, because you see that from the river, sometimes you can see the beautiful, but behind that beautiful trees, all is already gone, because that's really the pattern of that we can see. Next slide. So the ecotourism, so we develop the ecotourism, we develop along the river, we develop the bird watching, because this is the 100,000 bird every during the migration. And then also they develop culinary, enjoy and everything. So we're trying to get this understanding the mangrove and everything, that activity during the tourism. Next slide. And then also this is still in Bahasa, how did the Suksang, gold jewelry shopping, souvenir shopping, all we develop this food and everything. So of course it's not easy, because community is egalitarian, it's not like indigenous people. It's just so many tribe there, mixed tribe. Next slide. Here is the, after that, I think that after 2 years, they start coming, with look at the boat, we developed by communities, and then the photographs, so that they not directly go to the bird. They have to be 200 or 100 meter platform, so that they can see the bird, not directly, And then we also develop this thing, how do we get this after, because we providing water with the reverse osmosis, I think the community really happy with that. So then they are really good and making this progress with the head of the village and so on. Next slide. This also trying to understand the cultural tourism, beside both, but also how do we get this sacred tomb pilgrimage, for example. Of course, we created that for so those people from Palembang, the big cities, but also souvenir, and also all these things. Next slide.
Boleh tamat, Pak?
Yeah, this is the last one. How do we get this to be sustained? We are trying to get this to adopt this becoming the government. But I understand that if they're government, of course, if they budget, if they don't have any budget, they will not. So we're trying to develop this, so with the bank to some from the local bank, but also with the blended financing. So we are put it in the national level, so that hopefully that the community will get benefit, but also this tourism becomes sustainable. And I think the last time, they won some award from the tourism. I think that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bapak. Thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. And now we have time for Q&A. On the chat box, I saw a number of questions earlier.
Tan Sri, maybe I can answer one that I saw.
The first question is to, okay, Tegwin, would your proposals for community forest play apply for orang asli as well as urban folk?
Yeah.
Second, are any NGOs pushing for your proposals to be adopted? And third, is there any good example of functioning community forests elsewhere in the region? First for you, Tekwin.
All right, thanks, Tan Sri. So very quickly, yes, it will apply to Orang Asli and urban folk. And there are some NGOs such as the Malaysian Nature Society and also the Shah Alam Community Forest Society that are pushing for these things. I don't notice that there was also a question in the chat whether national policy is necessary or effective given the fact that states have autonomy on forests. And I would say in response to that is that it's not absolutely necessary, but it is definitely very useful. It helps a lot in that in response to the national policy, 11 out of 13 states actually follow the framework set by the federal government.
Okay, then there's a question. Where do I get the questions again? Sorry, let's. Questions to Naga. Could explain the challenges and ways to overcome and get continuous participation by friends of mangroves, and what kind of recognition have been received by the Friends of Mangroves from government agencies and other parties? Naga, please.
Thanks, Nancy. I think the first questions, to answer the first questions, I think in terms of what you call the sustainability part, that's why, as I mentioned, I think we can establish a community group, but we have to put in a plan. It's a long-term plan which has to be established and legalized, and we have to create the identity, and we have to link with the existing what we call the government agencies. And currently, if you look at it under the social forestry program, which I think all these registered recognized CBOs has been given some sort of space for them to be members and also receive some benefit. That's one. Another thing, in terms of recognizations, I think if you look at some of the group that we've been established, like Sahabat Hutan Bakau Kuala Gula, Sahabat Hutan Bakau Lekeh, and there are a few other community members has been recognized, and then they've even given a chair in the National Mangrove Planting Working Group in order to have say from the local side. If they're facing any problem, they can raise up to that meeting. They can be they've been addressed at the national level and state level. And plus, they're also receiving through that particular platform, they're also able to get some financial support for them to continue that activity that we carry out. Yeah, I hope I answered the question, Tasri.
Good examples of functioning community forests elsewhere in the region.
Yeah. Okay. Just to answer that question, I mean, like we are talking about Kuala Gula. They've been what we call from the totally degraded area. You've been seeing, according to the satellite images, 2015, about 200 hectares been totally bare land. But currently, they've been worked well to rehabilitate approximately about 150 hectares within that area. And that has been replicated to other areas. If you look at it, we managed to have 5 community groups, and all this group been learned from this Kuala Gula. I think that's one of the showcase that we can use it. And for Sahabat, for Gambut, other than mangrove, we're talking about Pitsong Forest. There's another community groups are actively taking part. That is the Friends of North Selangor Pitsong Forest, and also Sahabat Hutan Gambut Asli Temuan, which they are fighting to remain, to protect the existing Kelenafar and so North Selangor Pitsong Forest. There are communities have been exist, but again, the approaches and then the ecosystem they're looking at is diverse and varied.
Okay. For Professor Dr. Nur Hidayat, what's the difference between SROI and coastal benefit analysis, and which is more often used by organizations? Second, is a strategy you have used for this park is also applied in other sustainability projects? And finally, in SROI, how do you monetize the non-monetary outcome? Ibu?
All right, your turn, Shreya. So basically in Malaysia, many companies are very familiar with cost benefit analysis compared to SROI because SROI is quite new. But the difference is that cost benefit analysis is more, it's a more dominant tool used in welfare economics. It's count mostly on the monetary kind of measurements compared to SROI because SROI counts social benefits. For example, like when you talk about environment, maybe from your environment projects, you declare that the project should contribute to greater well-being. So how actually you a CBA couldn't count that, but SRI can count that unmonetary kind of measurement into the calculator. But in UUM, for projects that related to environment, welfare, well-being, so it usually count measured by SRI compared to CBA or another kind of measurement called creativity index. Okay, in UM also starting 2020, I have been given a responsible to train head departments about the SRI and the strategy and measurements in order to complete the calculations. How we monetize the non-monetary outcome. I give one example. So when I look at the presentations just now, okay, when how actually we measure, we monetize increment in terms of skills. Okay, so because skills we can usually we declare increase skills in certain aspect. Okay, so but then how we monetize them is that you just imagine if we send someone to certain training, so the cost to train them can actually counted as the amount that contribute into the impact of the SROI. So that's how actually we convert into the non-monetary measurements into the monetary base to complete the SROI.
Okay. There does not appear to be any questions to Professor Dr. Engineer Christine. Anyone wants to ask questions to Professor Christine?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Yes, actually, in our country and also in my province, Lampung province, because we have two national park, Bukit Barisan and also Wekambas. Previously, we only have the one conflict elephant with the human only in Wekambas, but right now both of them we have a conflict. Okay, I think this the first one is interesting because I think not only in Lampung, also in Aceh and others, Riau and also others province, we have the same conflict, elephant and human. Based on my knowledge, this I think this first one is because the elephant have the many threats to stay like previously because their habitat right now have the damages because according to our one of our elephants expert, he said that elephant needs around 500 kilometers square for their home ring. You can imagine this very large. So right now we have also another problem is squatters. So the squatters go to the forest and make the home ring or habitat of elephant is more and no more. It's around right now according to the expert is only around 30 or 50 kilometers squares only right now. So the elephant go to move out from the national park. Actually, we have the sum of our resolution conflict for our elephant. Firstly, we have like a conventional method. We have like a fire, we have the firework, we have the carbide cannon, and also we make the big holes. So elephant cannot through past the big holes like this. This is our first conventional method. But after that, one by one of that method have better and better. And according to my friend, we have another method like from WWF. They have some expert there in that institution. They have done about that like a survey. Actually, how how the home rings preference of the elephants. According to the friends, it is the elephants like to go to the nearby of the rivers, and after that they like stay in the big trees where they have the shelter, and also they like the some species plant like cacao, rice, coconut, and others. So that's why we should have a strategy not to plant that kind of species, the firstly. The second one, it should be the people or the community who stay in the forest that nearby the river, who stay nearby the trees should be go away from this home ring. And another one, I think the last good of our resolution, it has been done in Waikambas National Park. The National Park unit with the some NGO and also my university have a collaboration to make it like community-based ecotourism to see the elephant go away in the afternoon like this, because they have also home ring the outside of National Park, so we can see the elephant go with the group, and after that they will back to the forest like that. So we can promote the tourists can go at the time, and what they feel is the elephant will through pass like this. It is the last of our strategy to make the conflict to be benefit for the all. Thank you.
Is there much poaching in the parks, Ibu? Poaching.
Pardon, sir? Poaching?
Is there much poaching in the parks?
Yeah, I think it's a lot.
Poaching.
Yeah, I think
How
for
do
the
you control that?
poaching.
How do you get community involvement to stop poaching?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we try. Yeah, the government and also the community. I mean, with the National Park unit right now, like I already present, but my presentation for the forest park location. But actually, we have also this scheme for our national park. So the people have the good collaboration with our national park staff in resort base. They do the some patrolling. But yeah, we hope next time it will be better and better the result. But right now it still have the sum of our limitation, particularly for the COVID. In these 2 years, we have some limitation to move forward to other place because this is COVID, and also according to my friend, actually the COVID not have negative impact to the poaching. Yes, Saleh, Pak Saleh, it is still we still have the poaching threats, but our government already try to do the best one. Yeah, thank you. I think Pak Yatna, Professor Yatna is our senior. He can give some information.
Okay. The question to Sunny. You have seen the question, Sunny?
Yes.
Can we share it with you?
Okay. Well, how you want to know more about PACAS? So
yeah,
I
PACAS.
Explain a bit on PACAS, but it is a successful story for MNS, and it's the first village community involving village community in environment education. So one thing about the Kampung Endah, that village name, they are actually very disciplined group, and then the head village is very strong in the conservation and education. So they have a good leader, and the village itself won an award for the cleanest village, beautiful village in the state of Selangor. So so the people there that we involved in the project, and then my colleague Neil developed the community themselves. So and Neil have to be there regularly, and then he found that the villagers have a lot of ideas of what activities they can do in their village. It's a normal village, but they have a lot of things like herbs all over the place in the gardens and along the roadside, and it's situated among the oil palm estates. And then there are a lot of wildlife, birds and small mammals that you can watch, and even in the nighttime. So they sort of come up with a lot of ideas on their own, what package they can give and educate the visitors themselves, and also they also built a place for them to stay overnight so they can experience the night walk and all those things. So the success is them. Actually, MNS guided them, developed them, teach them, capacity built them, and then the techniques of guiding and they are there's a few earlier group, the elderlies, I call them. They are very, very, very good in presenting, and then they give very good explanation. So and when we launched it to open it up to the public, and there's a lot of people coming to see village life, experience village life. What was presented by Dr. Jana. So the culinary itself, how do you make things, the handicrafts. So these are the things that people would like to know. The culture, some cultures may not be seen today, like they have the fishing methods and all those things. So it's a very interesting village for people to learn and explore. So and that's how they were quite successful in the model for the community-based model. So and then the second question was about the AWC bird count, which I didn't manage to talk about the flyway community. How easy to spot or identify those water birds, which even the experts themselves will have some bit of problem, but it has to start somewhere. So those interested will learn faster than the rest, and then they will have trainings and identification, and then they were given and then they will have to go to the field every January to do the Asian water bird census with the experts and learn directly from that. And then after the results are out, they have a seminar among themselves, the communities, those counters, most of them are MNS members, and then they discuss the problems and also learn from the experts themselves. So this is the way we can increase the number of volunteers to do the count every year, and also increase the size of counting place, which is very important to learn, to know what is the status of the water bird, migratory water birds. And then this results actually will channel to the Wetlands International for them to incorporate in the bigger picture of what's happening to the flyway around the world. So I think that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Sunny. To Professor Jatna, I would like to ask you, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
This community-based tourism, can you explain that ideas? Like the idea of community-based, how can they get money out of it? And they give the food tourism, agro-tourism, eco-tourism. Could you explain a bit on that? Expand the ideas, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the first thing that when we are doing the participatory rural appraisal, I said that this water is the most important. They have to buy water every time, but with our first thing with we provided that from that river, and then we're making the reverse osmosis, and then they changes the behavior and everything, because that really the first thing. The second step is that how do we get this community? Used to be they become an encroacher, they everything, so now it changes behavior. It's not really easy, but I think slowly they just move, and I think when they develop this, because then they saw that there are a lot of good yacht and good from Palembang ship. They go to the areas about 2 hours, and then suddenly the people are just looking, So I think the ideas of community base is that they will be involved. So we train them starting from English, starting from everything, culinaires and everything. And then also they becoming guide into the national park, right? So they earn the money, not only from that national park, but also from the culinary and many things that we develop this. But do we need that? The question is also, is the bird also be sustained? Because they are the biggest migrant bird in Indonesia. 100,000 birds come to the national park. And of course, the national park patrol cannot be, because this is really big national park. And the cost from Palembang to this is really expensive. But if we empower people in the park, around the park, the buffer zone, then, patrollings and everything is taken care by themselves, because they really need to have bird. But also, of course, there has to be biologically sounds. You cannot just watching during the very critical time. For example, the first time they come, there has to be allow only few people. But then when they come really in the big flock, then we can start with many others come. So there is a lot of things. The community also regulated that with the help of the university and also with others. Is that possible? We have not monitored whether the bird is decreasing, whether it's of course that has to be a long-term project to monitor whether that the migratory bird from Russia to Indonesia and then to Australia. So that's why I think really need, because when we cut off that, then there is no migratory bird up to this one. So this area is a very important for community. So the community get the benefit, as you mentioned, Pak Saleh, is that they get a benefit directly, but also indirectly. The amenities we're trying to get more broad, and plus with the sustainability. For example, we market the tourists from Palembang, so to the area. So that one. I think that really is it my answer your question?
Thank you very much, Bapak.
Tan Sri, if I could interrupt. I just noticed that there's another question for Prof. Jatna regarding how the tourism and community engagement help in reducing the illegal trade associated with poaching.
Oh, thank you, Tawin. Rana?
Yeah, I think reduce especially the poaching, but not the trafficking. We don't know. So reduce because the idea first thing, the community guarded this along maybe 5 kilometers of the bird areas, and there is also the platform to understand the patrol, because we worry that people come and then they kill the birds. Or the other one is that the area of the mangrove, when they cut it off, there is no other habitat for the bird. So the two things, one is that directly poaching, and the other one is the habitat destruction. Because when I see that from the river and from the sea, look good for 50 meters. Beyond that, it's already cut off a lot of trees. That's why I think with the busy, with the activities, hopefully they will not. So the area that already destroyed will recover, but who knows, after 5 years, but hopefully that will be sustained.
Tan Sri, maybe I can just mention in the chat that question just now, which I think Prof. Jatna answered quite well, is the question came from Faisal. And the first question to me, I was just informed from the chat, came from a guy named Abraham Mu. And then also in the chat, there is a question from Stephen Page to me. And Tan Sri, if I may, can I read it out?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. He says that he asks, how do you see the way forward for creating a community forest category as you propose? What processes do you think might be followed to achieve this? And the answer I should have mentioned, but it's actually quite straightforward, is that you need the state politicians to say yes. And then they will take it to the day one and amend the state law. And it needs to be done, well, the quickest way to do it is probably state by state. So if you've got a friendly politician in your state, and I'm in Selangor, we've got some friendly politicians, you go to them and convince them. Of course, it could be done at the federal level as well, but that may take a bit more time. Thank you, Tan Sri.
Okay. To Professor Christine, I'd like to ask you, how can you use technologies, modern technologies, in conservation of environment and natural resources? Do you get my question?
No, yeah, so that's why I need a clear question about what the main technology here, Pak Saleh, Dr. Saleh.
What technologies can we use? Modern technologies. They use what they call it, remote sensing. They use tagging. They use what other new technologies can we use in conservation of natural resources?
Yeah, I know
especially
only
animals.
Okay, maybe I have only known some. I think Pak Supriyatna should be the answer because he is our species expert here, but not me actually. But I'll try. And as I know, based on my student research, that one of our technology here we use biopolar to know the like elephant home rigs, and also we know where are they going to go, where are they back to forest, like the biopolar. And another one, we also use another like GIS, because from GIS we will know how much our effort will have a positive impact to our forest, like that. And also another one for the other technology, I think we use some of agroforestry technology for our species and also for our farmer. They can use like how suitable agroforestry method to use to adapt for the adaptation of our climate change, like that, and also for some mitigation effort. It is agroforestry, so like this. But I don't know what the else of our conservation, particularly for the wildlife, because I'm not in that and that's rings of this knowledge. Maybe Pak Professor Supriyatna.
Terima kasih. I was thinking of the use of drones. How can we use the drones in conservation? Maybe anyone can answer that.
Yeah. We use for the social forestry also we use, because it very, very help us and also the people to know what the actual condition of the forest. So we no need go to the forest, because this I think all of us know that the condition, it will be steep, and also it is not good to go to forest like this. So we can use our drone actually.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes left. I would like to invite anyone who have special, who would like to share ideas. I don't see any more questions, Edwin, did you? Anyone who wants to share ideas in the last 5 minutes?
Maybe Tan Sri, can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I think as I mentioned, what we call, I think there's some of the fellow panelists has been discussed. I think if you look at it again, I would like to put the stress a little bit here. The environmental issue is a local issue. I mean, you start from local. If you're not controlling well at the local level, then it's going to be impact to the federal and also the global. So in this case, I think whenever we have a mindset, whenever we wanted to say, wanted to involve the local community, we always need to be planned, what they call with the sustainable, because a sustainable science has to be built in. It has to be built in. Because the problem is, even in our country, we want to talking about the community policy, and the community participatory policy need to be included in the forest reserve, any kind of protection things. I think people wanted to see more on the result oriented existing project. That's why there's a lot of people put a lot of what they call points here. Okay, can I see this successful area? Can I see that the community been, whether they've been participate? I think all these things can be answered if the project that we wanted to build in or going to be implemented with the involvement of the community, it has to be in a sustainable manner, and then we have to recognize and have to link. While we implementing the activity, we have to link to the existing government. Let them to recognize, let them to aware this community also playing a very key vital role in terms of not only restorations plus protecting that particular ecosystem. I think, and also we need to recognize them as not only as a local stewardship, they also has to be recognized as a local champion to look after the issue. As we mentioned just now, Tekpin, which we need to be a very good politician, we get to know, even we get to know the politician or the local politician. But again, if the local champion able to, able to convince from the local voice, can reach up to the local politician, to the local MB, I think this will be more sensible. People can look into more seriously. I think that's what we try to do it here. I think from the fellow panelists presentation, everybody are talking at the same angle. I think what we need to look into it, we want to get more the buy-in by the policy makers. I think that is the things is lacking now. Whether there's a lot of practices, there's a lot of best management practices being showcased, but again, the buy-in value, the buy-in value from the existing policy makers and the leaders. That's it.
I just want to add, Dr. Saleh, that not only best practice, I think future best practice, we have to understand what that really means. Future best practice and best practice is the experience, but future best practice is also beyond. I think that we mentioned, for example, in our communities, for example, we thought that the community will not be, as part as we thought about with the technology and all. But when we develop this camera trap for the monitoring the elephants, and they understand and they're very quick, it's not really, we always undermine them. But, when we develop this, they catch up very fastly. So I think sometimes I agree with Pak Naga, the mindset of our developer has to be changed. Is to be within them, not between them. Within them means that we are together with them. It's a very important when we develop this, because once we are distant ourselves, so I think they becoming, easy for somebody who, lobbying them to do things. Because, for example, very expensive, like mangrove or all these forests, chopping it easy, they can convert it. You said that, well, of course, compared to developing tourism, how many years the tourism will be developed, So that's the trade-off has to be really, really careful enough. And that's why I think the multidiscipline and transdiscipline is very important to work in the community level. Not only me, because I really need somebody who really in the community development. And I'm also hard-nosed conservation scientist. So in order to do that, really need to be working with them and trying to do this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak. We have, I think, according to my watch, only 1 more minute left. Any last words from anyone? Anybody?
Tan Sri, I'd like to continue what Dr. Jana was saying about tourism. So this tourism is also need to be, you have to carry out responsibly. So there must be some guidelines.
Sustainable tourism,
so that it won't destroy the environment themselves.
It's true.
So everyone has to do it responsibly. Even the visitors themselves have to learn about this. So that means before the tourism session starts, so you have to explain to the visitors to be responsible themselves also. That's my comment.
Thank you. I'd like to share with all of you the experience of the para parks, where the para parks work together with the Orang Asli of the Aboriginal population by appointing them as guides. And by doing that, they've reduced the number of poaching, number of snares in the forest considerably. And this, to my mind, is an example of collaboration between the Orang Asli or Orang Asal, the Aborigines, and the authorities in conservation of parks. Okay, and any last minute comments from the speakers, from the panel? If not, it remains my duty to thank Nature Society for organizing this, to thank the panel, Tywin, Sunny, Noridayu, Christine, Nagarajan, Bapak Supratna for their contribution and sharing of their experiences. I think community involvement is very important in resource management. Gone are the days where you go with a big stick and the law and say, I'm the law, I want to do this in the forest. Cannot. You must work with the communities because the communities have inherent responsibility plus inherent responsibility as part of their own culture in managing forests. So with that, I thank you all once again. I wish you all a safe evening. Stay healthy, stay away from the pandemic, COVID, and above all, stay at home and be safe. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Santi Doctor.
Thank you so much, Tan Sri Saleh, for chairing the session. It was so insightful. A big thanks to all our speakers and also to our viewers for joining in. Truly invaluable information that we can hopefully, get more voices of the community to put pressure on policymakers. I personally hope that we can put an end to poaching once and for all. So anyway, that concludes our sessions today. Please join us again tomorrow as we will have a special workshop at 11:30 a.m. followed by session 6 and session 7 at 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. respectively. For the workshop, we're going to talk about international perspective in managing stakeholders for activities related to forest governance in Malaysia, while for session 6, get ready to find out more about empowerment of gender and indigenous communities in forest protected areas management. And in session 7, we will be touching on the topic of governance and biodiversity conservation. So I really look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Till then, have a great evening ahead and take care. Thank you.